Good morning and welcome to Snow Talk, the podcast of the Snow and Ice Management Association. We bring you trends, stories, news, and personalities that are shaping the professional snow and ice management industry. I'm your host, Martin Tirado from SIMA. Quick thank you to our sponsor. This season of Snow Talk is sponsored by Western Snowplows and Fisher Engineering. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. Let's dig in, grab some shovels, and start talking snow. Really excited today for this show because we're going to get out of our normal area here in the United States or North America, and we're going to talk to an important guest here coming all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, joining us from the UK. Yes, just so you know, there is important snow and ice work being done in the UK, and we have as our guest here is Dean Harvey from Accugrit. He has attended SIMA's Snow and Ice Symposium a few years back, and he's going to talk to us about his work in the snow and ice management industry. Dean, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martin, for that introduction. Yeah, really appreciate the invitation to come on your show today.
Okay, great. I'd like to just start at the beginning. How did you get into doing snow and ice work, and how did you get into, with the company of Accugrit? I'm guessing you founded the company?
Yeah.
Tell us how you started in this.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess when I left school or college, as you have it over there, I didn't specifically look to join or start a snow and ice business. Over here, it's probably more ice and snow because we get less of the white stuff over here. But basically, back in 2004, a little bit of back history, I went backpacking around the world with my wife, not my wife at the time, but we had about 18 months or here, there and everywhere around the world. And at some point we knew we had to come back. And when I got back to the UK, obviously we then got married and then thought, right, need to formulate a career here. We've been backpacking for too long. And then there was a regional ice business in the east of England where I'm based now. And it was just a small business that had around 80 sites that they were responsible for, managing sort of ice and snow in the east of England. That business did really well. It was only me and the owner, and I think it was a lady in the office on the finance side. But there seemed to be a need for our service. We had a couple of strong or hard winters back then, we did a really good job at what we did, and the business started to grow over the next 4 or 5 years. We became a national provider in the UK. We got that business up to around 1,200 sites. I think we were managing by 2015, I think it was. That business got acquired by a big national multiple services provider, and it was kind of my time to move on, if you like, at that point. But at that time when I was at that business, there was probably 7 or 8 businesses across the UK that just specialised in snow and ice management. And gradually they all got acquired and fell into these bigger multi-services companies. And all of a sudden there wasn't one company in the UK that solely specialised in this critical service, when you're looking after hospitals and these key sites. So we saw, me and my business partner at the time, we thought, hang on, there's a gap in the market here. We could go back a step and just provide this winter service. So that's in 2019. We formed Accugrit. So in the summer of 2019, we had 0 sites, 0 clients. I had a big hat stand in the corner of the room. So I was juggling various roles trying to get this business off the ground. And we did. The first winter, we had about 45 sites that we were managing this service. But our reputation grew. Then COVID hit back in 2020. And then we thought, what on earth are we going to do here? But then I'm not quite sure what you had over in the US, but we had COVID testing centres dotted all around the country. And we got in with a business to provide snow and ice management of the COVID testing centres across the UK. And of course, it was all of a sudden a critical service. We were and imagine at that time if the COVID centres had been shut for snow or ice, there would have been a slight problem going on. So we thought that's what kind of helped us get us going, I guess, and organisations had less staff going forward, so it's starting to subcontract the work out to a business like us, looking after NHS, etc. So, and so back then, so that's 6 years ago, we've now grown to a fully national business looking after 2,500 sites across the UK. About 120 teams dotted around the UK providing that service for our clients. So a little bit of the back history. Martin, I hope that helps in putting a little bit of context on me and what we do. So.
No, that's great. That's tremendous growth. Yeah, the COVID testing centers, we had the same thing. I recall them more, not going to some in the summer months, but in the winter time, they would need to be clear of snow and ice. Kind of talking about that, you said the company's more on ice management, just you don't get quite as much of the white accumulated stuff. How I was going to take a look at how do we compare how it's ice storms are managed in North America against the UK. When you get ice storms, what are some of the tools and techniques that your teams do to manage these ice storms and mitigate them?
Yeah, I mean, how it works over here, I guess we don't really get ice storms as such. I mean, our business or industry might be sort of aligned or focused differently to you. Again, like I said, we don't really get a lot of snow. Yeah, we've got sites in Scotland. We've had some snow events this previous winter. Early January we had in the Midlands, Birmingham area in the UK, it really got dumped. There was up to a foot of snow in some areas, but it comes and goes quite quickly. It doesn't hang around on the sidewalks, etc. The temperatures don't typically keep well below for long periods. So our industry, how it works over here, and that's really interesting to see how that compares. So when the local authorities, they're looking after the road networks outside of that. That's our business, I guess. But we work similar over here to the local authorities. So we interrogate the weather, or our systems do, each morning at 7 a.m. And if a client or an area has a trigger point, as we call it, clients may set their trigger points at +2, +1, or 0. And if that temperature for the next 24 hours drops below that trigger point, our teams will then be activated for that evening's gritting, typically between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. So it's, like we're a maritime nation, so there's a lot of marginal nights where it hovers around that 0. I mean, the last 2 weeks it's hovered near a 10, I think. So we've not been that active, but so we don't really have ice storms that come in. It's more those marginal, the clouds clear. In certain areas, it obviously forecasts that temperature to drop, and we'll send the teams out and mitigate that ice risk by putting the salt down before that temperature drops, typically. We do have ice storms, sort of Manchester area in the UK, the northwest, when the weather comes in off the Irish Sea, it's picking up a lot of moisture. We do get freezing rain in that kind of area of the UK, but typically we don't really get ice storms as such. I don't know how that compares with the weather you get in various regions in the US.
Yeah, similar depending on where you're at. Certainly coastal areas similar to that. I do like how your references to the metric system. Our Canadian listeners will enjoy that. Again, people from the US, we know the translation of that, but 0 is the freezing mark, so that's 32 degrees for I think our one lone country that still likes to use that system. But that's a good point. And one thing I want to say when you said gridding, because different parts of North America, some do use, again, sand, there's gravel, of course there's rock salt. So when you say gridding in the UK, what's your predominant products that you're using?
So when we say gritting, that's a term for typically the product we use. I mean, we do have within the UK mines that has a brown rock salt, has an element of clay grit mixed within that, mined from our salt mines, but it's 95% salt typically. So the contractors in this country and local authorities will either use that brown rock salt product, or there's a white rock salt that we would typically, I say we as in the UK, typically import from, say, the Middle East, from dry salt beds, marine rock salt. So they're the two typical products that are used. We don't really use liquid or brine wide scale in the UK, and obviously from when I come over to the SEMA show in Hartford in 2023, brine and liquid applications of equipment just seems to be a lot more widely used, or it's just not taken off in this country, whether people are not willing to invest in that change, etc. Getting buy-in from clients that you're using different products, it's if you can, then people are willing to make that investment. But yeah, typically we're brown or white rock salt.
Okay, good. All right. There's some similarities there. One interesting concept that we have, here the big thing is liability. Whether it's kind of damage to property, certainly slip and falls is a major pain point, and where oftentimes contractors are responsible for those types of incidents, and contracts are written in different manners that kind of that's part of one of the dangerous aspects of the industry that snow contractors in North America take on. Is there that similar liability in the UK? Do you have responsibility, or do you get put into lawsuits for potentially slip and fall or other damage accidents?
Yeah, if we're contracted to look after a site or portfolio of sites, and the weather, we obviously hold records of weather records. Our teams are recorded and tracked at site, etc. So if we're contracted to look after a site, the liability falls with us to keep that site ice and snow free. But obviously, so yeah, that liability would fall on us typically. But obviously, if that client doesn't have a service provider such as ourselves, then that liability falls to them. So that's typical approach. So
is it okay? Yeah. So what's the kind of the nature of litigation there? Is it, do you think this is a highly litigious, because it is here, I would say, it's considered pretty highly litigious with the accidents. Is that similar? And
yeah.
Is it? Okay. All right.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, if there wasn't that, if we wasn't litigious or had that issue in the UK, then I guess there'd be, we wouldn't have such a need for our business, with that insurance, I guess. When a client may have us to be that insurance provider for them, that might be their priority for having a service, or we may need to keep the site open, doing snow events, business continuity. But yeah, so it is there. We have prisons in the UK, as I'm sure you do in the US, but one example that I typically use, there was a prison warden patrolling the prison, and the path wasn't de-iced or snow cleared. That prison warden slipped over. This is one example. It's wide scale, really, as it is over with you. But that prison warden slipped over. He broke his leg. It doesn't sound that. But then there was a complication with the brake. Couldn't work again. He ended up suing our prison service for, I think it was £450,000. But there's multiple examples of that. I think the average slip claim in the UK is around £10,000 or $12,000. I'm not sure what the exchange rate is now, but so yeah, there is that expectation over here. So. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very similar. Yeah. I think the exchange rate is actually even more favorable. I think it's the pound goes a little bit further than that even, but I've heard a mix here of anything that's around that to maybe even 25,000 on a slip and fall claim to settle it, but it depends. There really isn't a great area that's aggregated some of that information here where you would know, but those are some, just talking to some insurance providers as to what often happens. Okay. Yeah, there's certainly some similarities there, and certainly some, I'd say, again, like you mentioned, some pain points with it, but some aspects of it aren't that were compensated
Yeah.
to mitigate snow
Yeah.
and ice. And if you took away some of that, would that have a downward pressure on on pricing or service level? I don't know. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. Like I said, if that wasn't required, there, yes, we need to keep sites open. But again, we don't really have a lot of snow over here to cause that much disruption. Maybe over here we're more aligned to thinking about litigation, etc., and providing our clients that protection from people slipping over.
yeah,
We look after large NHS hospital trust sites. There's one we look after. It's the third biggest hospital in Europe, in Sheffield. There's probably 25,000 people on that site at any one time, and Sheffield's very prone to snow. That is prone to snow, where it is in the UK and ice, etc. So there's a lot of eyes and ears. There's a lot of people to track across icy footpaths potentially. So they really need that service with full reports in place to provide them with that insurance service.
yeah. Okay, good. Hey, a little switching conversation is as you've worked in this market, this sector, you've also developed some of your own software to help your company and your team perform the services. Tell me what your software does and how you started it or why you did.
Yeah. No, thanks. Yeah, I mean, obviously at my previous business I was at, we had an off-the-shelf piece of software that we utilize, like a field management tool. So we could provide that evidence to our clients that we've been to sites. There's photos being taken. There's a GPS tracking of the teams walking or driving across the sites. So we had to provide that evidence, etc. And when we started Accugrit in 2019, we utilised a similar piece of off-the-shelf piece of field management software, and it was great. It could provide that transparent service that we wanted to give our clients. So not all of our clients are based at sites. They may be based in London, managing a portfolio of sites across the country. They'll come to us to deliver the service. So typically clients now are looking at reports on a client portal rather than looking at the salt on the ground at the site. That's typically how it's gone in the UK because we're a national company, so we've got national clients. So we had to provide, as well as a good gritting service, which we have got a good reputation for, but also I wanted to provide that transparent service that the teams delivering the work knew that the photos and the GPS that was being tracked by them, the clients could see that as well. So it's just a nice transparent service. It just felt that's what I wanted. That's what we wanted Accugrit to have. But that off-the-shelf piece of software that we had, it didn't interrogate the weather data coming in on a daily basis to create job schedules. That's kind of the vision I had. So I knew hopefully the growth we were going to have over the next 5 years, we were going to circa have 150 teams dotted around the country. It's roughly what we've ended up with today. But to job schedule 2,500 sites using that old piece of software, it was a lot of manual. There's the forecast. Drag and drop those jobs into that field teams app that day. That I'd need a team of 10 or 20 to do that, how we operate over here each day. So we made the decision to develop our own piece of software that did exactly what we wanted, where we wanted the business to go. And that's called Igloo, and we've had that now for 4 years, and we've developed the software in each off season. As you do, you grow, so you learn what works and doesn't. We developed that over the last 4 years, and it's now quite a good, neat little package that interrogates the weather forecast. All of our sites obviously have postcodes or zip codes. So the weather forecast, we have a forecast for each zip code for each site. So instead of looking at if we have a full night across the UK, so instead of looking at 2,500 forecasts, they drop in the weather drops into our system. It interrogates what jobs should be scheduled depending on what clients, where they want their trigger points to be. So in the space of a couple of minutes, we can job schedule 2,500 jobs in effect. We click a button, it notifies the teams, they respond, say they've got the message. It gives the client a nice, succinct little list of sites that are going to be performed that night in the space of a couple of minutes, and clients can respond to that. And that's how we manage the daily schedule. So that, for us, that software, and I don't know what you use over there, but that is, so our daily scheduling process is one person managing that. And if it runs perfectly smooth, which it doesn't always, there's a team sickness or a vehicle breakdown, and obviously we then have to manage that. But typically we could have upwards 10, 20,000 sites that will still flow through in that couple of minutes of job schedule. So to us, it's been a great natty bit of software, but it gives our clients that transparency of the service as well.
Okay, great. Igloo, good name.
Yeah, protecting our clients from winter. I think that was kind of the thinking behind it. So.
Right. Yeah. No. Very good. Hey, are the Igloo software? Are you using that just internally for your company, or are you also selling it or have users that use it outside of your company?
So we've got some. I mean, it's not quite been built yet to be able to sell it as a piece of software or management product, but it has that potential in the future. But currently, it's just for us internally. But yeah, it's something we may consider, I guess, in the future, especially outside of our. We don't really want to sell it in the UK, I guess, because it'll give others that advantage that we think we've got. But yeah, it's something we may consider in the future.
Yeah, your own internal proprietary, right? But you said 2,500 or 2,000 sites throughout the UK. So that's a lot of, plus the personnel who are servicing those sites, right? That's a big group of people, right? Yeah,
it's turned into a bit of an operation, I think. Yeah. I don't know if people can see me now or not, but I used to have hair. I haven't anymore. But yeah, it has grown, and I was with our head of business development yesterday, and we've got another sort of meeting in London tomorrow to plot the next sales campaign. I guess the business is there in this country. We're looking to add on another 1,500 sites to that, and we've been quite acquisitional as well. We've made some regional gritting acquisitions in the UK as well, where there's small contracting businesses. And they're looking to not maybe continue in that, but they're really good clients for us. So we've worked with and acquired some smaller gritting companies as well. So growth doesn't just come from a sales campaign as such. There's an acquisitional approach as well.
Yeah, you had touched a couple examples earlier. Just want to revisit that. Who are kind of some of your typical customers, your ideal customers? Is it hospital systems or other institutional? Just give me a couple of what would, not to name them, but just like your ideal customer is kind of this type of property. What is that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it may be similar to your types of private customers in the US and Canada. But it's either public or private sector. So public sector for us is that kind of hospital trust. I'm just trying to get terminology matching. Schools, rail authorities. So we have rail networks. We don't have one rail company across the whole of the UK. The East of England may have a separate rail authority. So they're really good for us. Police authorities, we now look after metropolitan police sites all across London. So that's the kind of public sector examples. Private sector would be large FM companies that look after multiple services for various organisations. So FM businesses. We may have Jaguar Land Rover. I'm sure you've heard of those. I think they import or export, over to you. We look after all of their sites across the UK, mainly in the Midlands. So that's kind of the private sector kind of businesses that will look after I mean, Jaguar Land Rover, I guess, I think their main plant that we look after, they're manufacturing 3,500 vehicles per week out of there. The average value is £120,000. I don't know what that is in dollars. So you can imagine they're quite sensitive when there's a snowstorm on the way. That production stops, which we'd had in January in the Midlands, and they were very well. Not all of our clients are used to snow clearance or want it. It's again a different market, but because of that production that could have stopped in snowstorms, Jaguar Land Rover certainly have ploughs and machines dotted across sites that they're willing to pay for to put there, but that's not standard in the UK.
Yeah, good. Hey, shifting a little gears to equipment now. You mentioned you came to our symposium in Hartford, so thanks for making the trip to that. No. I'm sure you certainly checked out the trade show and saw the types of equipment there. What did you notice that you found was interesting? What was different? What was like, oh, this is the same? You may use some of the same equipment in the UK as there is here. Some manufacturers here are global companies. They have products all throughout the world. What are a couple of things that kind of stood out to you after taking a look at all the products and equipment at the symposium?
Well, when I first walked in the hall, I noticed the machines are a lot bigger than ours. So that's your pickup trucks. You have a lot more snow plows. We don't typically have a specific snow and ice conference or symposium in the UK. It's probably tagged on to a grounds maintenance landscaping kind of conference where we would sell our kind of wares, if you like. But I think the first thing I noticed, everything was a lot bigger. Everything was aligned more to snow, or they seemed to be more prominent. And again, we touched on earlier, things were more aligned. There was more liquid. There was more brine applications in the room as well. So they're probably the main things that I noticed.
Okay, yeah. Just our conversation prior to this was brines are still liquids aren't used heavily yet in the UK. Maybe they're emerging, maybe not. But where have you kind of seen them, being used? And do you think it's growing, or just kind of is there a mix to that?
It's certainly not as wide scale, I believe, as over in the US and Canada. I mean, there's some contracts like the rail authorities that I mentioned where we have to look after bridges or sort of non-corrosive areas that are required, or station platforms. They certainly want a liquid product typically on those, but the larger areas, it's mainly a granular salt product that is used, and the industry just doesn't seem willing to shift away from the investment into new equipment. Whether it's anything to do with climate change, not trying to open up a can of worms, but we haven't had that many really severe winters over the last 10, 15 years, whether the winters are starting to shrink a little. People are maybe investing less in change, although obviously liquid is probably more beneficial, more commercially advantageous to use a liquid product. But whether we're quite old school in the UK, local authorities, it's quite old fashioned how we're applying product. It's just, no one seems to be willing to make that investment. I guess we're probably in a good place to do that. But it's not as much as the US, I don't think.
Yeah. It's more for my curiosity, and hopefully some listeners will enjoy this too, but is there some kind of anything equivalent to like a SIMA in UK, Ireland areas? I mean, even take a look at we have had some attendees at our symposium from Sweden. So I kind of take a look at what are the areas outside the mountains of Europe that kind of get snowfall, and you're probably looking at the Sweden, Norway, Finland, northern UK. Like, is there anything like that in your area, or is it? Just talk to me about that.
Yeah, there's a national winter research group that we're members of, but that's more local authority aligned. It's a winter resilience group. more for local authorities. There isn't really a CIMA or CIMA, I've always said, so apologies if I get that wrong, but there isn't really a CIMA over in the UK or Northern Europe that I'm aware of. Maybe there's a gap there for you, Martin, I don't know. But, no, there doesn't seem to be. I mean, Sweden and those Nordic countries, they certainly get some real harsher winters than we do in the UK. That a little bit near Russia and the Eastern Bloc, so which winters can be very, very severe. So yeah, there's not an organisation like yours in the UK, that's for sure.
Yeah, same. Maybe there is a market opportunity there, of course. Right? It's just, part of what Simon is it's a community, and like how do we kind of collaborate as a large community, U.S., Canada, even overseas, to kind of help each other get better. Because we're all battling the same the same challenges we just talked about, the liability issues. Getting people to work in some of the harshest winter conditions is getting more difficult every year. It's very challenging to kind of get the next generation of people that want to operate trucks and equipment. Certainly there's things of like robotics and automation that are helping that, but they still need people behind them to power them. And how do we kind of help build that community in this community? So and I've always, since I came over to the show in 2023, it just seems a real nice community. We haven't got that. Whether that is because your market is bigger, I don't know. In the UK, our private winter ice and snow management industry is probably worth somewhere around £200 million. We believe, 100% accurate there. So there's certainly an industry here that we're growing into. But perhaps because our winters are not as severe or prolonged. That may be the reason. I don't know. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great to hear. And hey, one thing I want to ask is, just for fun, although we call it here soccer, they truly, although everywhere else pretty much calls it football. Here it's really American football, but I'm actually a big soccer fan. I mentioned earlier my team is Tottenham, North London.
Yeah.
What's your team that you pull for, and your local team? Who do you cheer for?
Yeah, the team I pull for is my local team to where I am in the UK, and that's Ipswich. And everyone's going, well, who's that, I guess. But back we were in the Premier League last season, and we hadn't been prior to that in the Premier League. I think it was around 23 years. So we've had quite a big break. But back in our heyday, or our glory days as such, in late 70s, early 80s, we won the FA Cup, we won a European trophy. So we were... I don't think Spurs have done that, but I don't know.
Right.
But they certainly won the FA Cup. But in our day, that's my team. We're not a big team, but we're now in the second division, just below the Premier League. We're right up there, so that we're hopeful of getting up there and maybe playing Spurs again next year.
Yeah, so, the championship. It's funny. You talk to other people, you say the championship, they think that's the highest league. It's like, no, that's not the highest league. That's the Premier League. But, there could be a whole nother podcast based on, if we wanted to talk about, maybe even World Cup preview, but that's a separate.
There you go, definitely.
Well, for most of our listeners, put this way, England has an incredibly strong World Cup team, and people here who enjoy soccer will be, Canada and the USA have some pretty solid teams too that could make it fairly far, in the World Cup being hosted here in several sites in North America. So
we're hopeful, I think. The last few tournaments that England have been in, we've even gotten to the final or the semi-final, and that's quite a success for us. But the team is quite a young team, but we've got a really good striker in Harry Kane, an expert player there. He's probably at his peak, even though he's now in his 30s, but he's now at his peak of his powers. So we feel like we've got a good chance, but with a bit of lady luck, I guess, we might get somewhere near, I guess. So.
Yeah, you always need that in any sporting competition. But I don't want to close out our conversation. Just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Your time difference is 6 hours, I believe. And just want to kind of, again, stress that, we have a community of people that support each other, and in North America, U.S., Canada, U.K., Sweden. Like I mentioned, we've had attendees at our symposium from there. So we want to just kind of welcome, kind of everybody that is here, kind of, battling these winter storms, these unpredictable events, and some of the worst conditions. So just want to say thank you so much for certainly what you do, and that certainly we welcome you here anytime as well.
No, thanks for the invite, Martin. It's been a pleasure. One, to learn about how it's done over there. I'm sure it's different, whether it's different industries, but I really appreciate the invite and having a chance just to explain what we do and learn a little bit as well. So.
Yep. Great to have you, and thanks for joining us. Look forward to talking to our next guest on the next podcast of Snow Talk from SIMA. Thank you.